Good morning, homeschool mamas. Let's chat trauma. Happy Monday morning. We are going to get into the stuff this week. Yeah, I know. I kind of don't want to either. I'd rather go into a distant, far-off land and live my life. But you know what? It's happening to everybody. There's no distant, far-off land unless you can afford to go to Mars right now. So anyways, trauma. We're going to talk about trauma this week. If we don't deal with the feelings we have, we will have to deal with the consequences. If I learned anything from Edith Eger's books, she was a 16-year-old ballerina that was in the Holocaust, and she speaks over and over and over as a psychologist that you gotta feel the feelings, you gotta experience it, you gotta acknowledge it, you gotta figure it out. So if you are not wanting to listen to this, then you can stop it. But I'm telling you from personal experience too, the only way to deal with something is to actually acknowledge that it's happening. I know you've got a lot going on and there's so many things that you're experiencing. This year, I repackaged a post today about pandemic and how to create a routine in the pandemic, create a homeschool routine in the pandemic. Something that I wrote about last year, but I'm thinking about it more because this Wednesday, I'm going to be online conferencing. I'll be in a seminar for Judy Arnell's conference. I think it's called Alberta Homeschool Association. And I am going to be discussing this and other elements of what self-care strategies you need in order to homeschool over the long term. This is pressing in our part of the world. The tension, the frustration, in very many different ways is mounting for everybody in Canada. So I know that most of the people that are listening to me are from Canada or the US, and there is an odd person from Australia, and maybe that is the one place I would like to be right now. But I recognize that most people are from Canada, some are from the US, and things are different in different zones. For us in Canada, there are increasing restrictions, there's increasing threats about the variants, and I am not here to either make you feel angry, anxious, wanting to turn this off about that stuff. But this week is going to be about how to cope in all this stuff and how to also address trauma. They could be different concepts, different discussion points, and they can also be all one and the same. But I wrote in this pandemic post, we might all be paddling on the same rough waters, but we're all having a very different experience in our boat on the waters. And I acknowledge your experience in whatever unique way you have had this year, how it's packaged for you in your actual homeschool or in your actual family or in your actual head. I acknowledge that we are all having very different experiences. I was listening to the Academy Award yesterday and listening to, I can't remember who quoted her, but somebody quoted Maya Angelou, and one of the most impactful authors for me, Maya Angelou. She said, each one of us has lived through some devastation, some loneliness, some weather superstorm or spiritual superstorm. We must say, at the end of it, I understand. I understand how you feel because I have been there myself. We must support each other and empathize with each other because each of us is more alike than we are unlike. I say that to you and I say that to me because yesterday my goal in chatting with you about all these things wasn't empathic. I feel, I'm not specifically speaking to you necessarily. I have feelings about all of this stuff outside of what I share with you. I'm coming from my own unique boat, and I'm married to a medical physician. I'm very aware of what is the dynamic in hospitals these days, and very well aware of the urgency for vaccination, for accepting and agreeing that we actually all need to do this thing called vaccination, and that we are having to deal with variants, which is changing up this whole thing. That is all I'm going to say about that. And yet, I also know that we all are in this thing together we are all on this planet together, and we all need to come to a place of understanding each other and showing empathy and really hearing each other's hearts. Because if anything, in this last year, everyone has experienced some form of trauma, or some form of, if trauma is determined and decided in this explanation, that life shifted in a way you weren't expecting, and the resulting consequences were harsh or troubling or challenging, then everyone has experienced trauma. I am fascinated listening to the podcast interview that I had with my guest last Wednesday. First time through, when I interview someone, I am trying to be as in the moment as I can, and I don't always hear everything they say. So I am so thrilled to listen back to the discussion between me and a counselor, a trauma counselor and author of Trauma No More. His name is Quantz, someone that had a giant impact on my life in the area of boundaries and figuring out who I am back in 2004. When Brené Brown was probably 10 years away from having any influence on my homeschool. He's had a huge influence, and he discusses about his trauma guide, which is really accessible and applicable to everyone if you are a human being. This is a book that would be useful for everyone, but we're going to talk about trauma, and when I am listening to him, I am so reminded there is a way through this. Thought self-care is required. Acknowledging your emotions is required. But I am not going to go into great depth about this, because my intention is further on later this week, I'm going to talk about how are we going to cope through this time? How are we already coping? Tell me if you want to address a certain area, this is the place to do it. This is the time to do it. I am going to be speaking to that. Not only because I'm going to be speaking on Wednesday somewhat about that, but I'm also going to be sharing in Jen McKinnon's Homeschool Moms Who Work group in a month. And you know what? This stuff is pertinent for me. This last year has been challenging, but this last week, I was vaccinated and thrilled by that. I was definitely sick by that for a couple days, but I'm so grateful for that. And we also decided to pull our child from high school, which has its own challenges, and having to address that, engage that. And frankly, we're feeling all the feels just like every other human being, but I want this content of what I'm trying to develop is based on my experience, your experience. So share your experiences of both coping, resilience, and your challenges, and let's engage this together. But later on this week, Wednesday or Thursday, depending on what's going on this week, I am going to talk all about how to actually be and how to engage, how to be at peace throughout this season. So what can I tell you other than I've been losing steam myself? I haven't told you that directly, that somewhere in February, normally I'm done. But this year I've told myself it's okay, you can be done. Because this year has been a very long year. And so I want you to hear that too. You can stop. You can focus on projects or focus on things that the kids are interested in doing. Do what works within your family. This is that time to decide to experiment with unschooling or self-directed learning or whatever phrase actually makes you feel like you can loosen up a bit and just enjoy the process. Get outside, do all the things. So on a lighter note, we are building our goat house. It is not too far from being done, but my husband's in the OR today, so it's not going to happen. I'm going to go cut some boards with my son so that he also can do work outside of me. This kiddo is learning math, just working right alongside his dad, learning about area, learning about measurements, learning about how to cut things, all the stuff of construction. So we could call this both a math class, a logic class, and obviously a shop class outside in our backyard. We're doing that, and hopefully we'll get the goat soon. And we are almost finished this book. Gotta recommend this one to you, Aurora of the Yukon. What a fascinating book. Aline Halliday is the illustrations, Aline E, and Keith Halliday is the author. So if you're looking for that, you can find that perhaps on Amazon. It's a local book for myself. And we're continuing on with Musics of the Great Composer, and I am loving that because that is my forte. I love doing that kind of thing on my own, and I certainly love including it in my homeschool learning together with my kids. So I think that is what I'm going to share with you this week. I'm going to give you a little taste of what I'm going to share about the trauma and the pandemic and how to engage in this whole thing, besides wearing masks and social distancing and all the stuff that the health people are suggesting. Be. Get comfortable being. Accept what it is. And self-nurture. Those are the 3 directions I'm going to chat more in detail with you this week. So, on that note, I hope you and your kids have a charmed couple days, and I'll see you